Cindy, could you turn on your camera, please?
Okay, at this time, we will call the meeting to order. And we will begin with item number 2, public comments. Are there any citizens who have signed up to address the board?
No, ma'am.
No. Were there any written comments submitted?
Nope.
Okay. Then we will move on to item A, consideration of an action on the minutes from the May 10th, 2023 meeting. Did anybody have time to, well, did we?
You need a motion. I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the meeting.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
But I don't vote because I wasn't.
Okay. Then we will move on to item 4, workshop, item A, review of and discussion on animal shelter partnership options. Rob.
Get the first one. Get the first one.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me. Okay, so we're still in the research phase, but we reached out and met with All Kind, who is a nonprofit partner for the city of Abilene. So we had a long conversation with them. They're fairly new into the partnership. They're only 6 months into their contract with the city of Abilene, but had a long conversation about like how their agreement works, how it's structured. They had a fundraising component to fundraise for a new shelter. And so we talked through how they fundraised. So it was a very interesting conversation. Since they're so new, they're only 6 months in, they then referred us to KC Pet Project, which they talked with them when they were in the process of creating their partnership with Abilene. So we spoke to them was that yesterday? Yesterday, and got some information on how their contract is structured, how they got into that partnership, like what the benefits are and some lessons learned. And they're supposed to send us another contact. I forget what organization it was. So I'm waiting to receive that, and then we'll reach out and have a conversation with them. So just talking with the various nonprofit city partnerships and getting, the pros and cons and how they started and some lessons learned and what's worked well, to factor into the decision. Oh, okay. And then I'll hand it, you're doing the next part. So the nonprofits.
Yeah, so just to keep in mind, I think the research component is going to be one of those ongoing things. I don't think we'll ever stop researching, kind of understanding what the different models are. I think, when we sat in, I think it was Friday afternoon, actually, when we met with Casey Pet Project, that was one of probably the first ones that was a true nonprofit that ran the operations of the shelter for a city, which was a very interesting model. You in the nonprofit world, there's a lot of, well, how do you raise money and how do you offer benefits and how do you do all these things, because they're contractors at the end of the day providing a service, and how does that work? And to hear them talk about how they grew that was really interesting. But they are fully functional. The other part to it is, obviously, I think I told you all last time that I was reaching out to different municipalities, those who had shelters, trying to understand kind of where they were from a shelter aspect, as well as kind of understanding the regional concept and if that was something that they were interested in, because at some point we would want to go back and talk to the county that we visited back in December on. So we did that, I think, for the most part of June, since our last meeting, basically, up until probably the first part of this week. And then actually Friday, we got some new news, if you will. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is and what does it look like and how we are participating in it at the end of the day. And more importantly, I think she's not here. I committed to you last time to put together a schedule. I had worked to put that together, and then Friday threw it away. And then Monday rebuilt it. So it's been kind of fluid. What I will keep in mind, you will see the schedule. I will put up there a little bit. Keep in mind, everything that's probably more than 4 weeks out was still a little bit we just need to play with it. It's going to move around. We need to acknowledge that it's going to move around. But I do have a schedule for us as we move forward. So what's been going on? I talked about working through the schedule piece. What we did find out was the county has instituted a regional shelter assessment. So they've reached out to the same communities that I've reached out to, or we have reached out to. And they asked us for a couple of things. They asked us for a ton of data. They asked us for data around animal intakes, disposition of animals. What is our city's population projections? What does our staffing look like today? And what are our operational costs? They asked us to fill those documents out. We literally got the request on a Monday. We turned it around the following Monday. So we have submitted all that back to them. The other thing that we did include in that intake, or that data dump, even though they didn't ask for it, were a lot of the services that we provide. So I didn't want it to be just looking at the numbers. I want to make sure they understand everything that we do. And so I really put our animal services folks in a pinch and said, I need this done within a day, basically. And they powered through the evening hours and got it done. So thank you to the animal shelter folks for knocking that out for us. But they were able to get that kind of put to, or at least allowed us to forward it on, if you will. A little bit about the shelter study that's going on. My understanding is that it is a multi-phase study. Part of it looks at regionalization, part of it looks at some other things that the county wants to look at within their own shelter. But the piece that we're very interested in is the regional shelter assessment. My understanding that it kind of began in June, in the month of June sometime. I don't have an exact date on it, and that's why I'm my understanding is about middle of June is basically best I can tell you. It's being done by Shelter Planners of America. It's looking at the regional shelter needs, so they're engaging with other communities as well. And it is expected to be completed sometime in August. So I've kind of built our schedule around that. And so what you will see is in the schedule, I will lay that out, but I will also want to make sure that we come back and once I've had an opportunity to digest it and organize it and bring it back to you guys, I still want to make sure that we bring it in front of this organization or this board so you guys can see exactly what's in there at the end of the day and what comes afterwards. And so the kind of the process that I've kind of worked building the schedule on is capturing as much information I can for the regional assessment, but also allowing time for reviews and comments and then next steps and what does that actually look like. So very big, broad topics, if you will, is what you're going to see. You're not going to see all the nuts and bolts of it, and how it gets put together, but just kind of big, broad topics of what we're trying to accomplish. I'm also going to ask you guys for a special meeting in August sometime. We have a decision point on when we want to meet. It's not, we can do it prior to our normal, if you took our normal time, which is this second Wednesday of the month. But I don't think timing wise is going to work out with the assessment. So I want to make sure that we get the assessment, give me a little bit of time to digest it, organize it, and I'll come back right back to you. So I want to hold you all guys to make sure we're here. The only downside is if we target kind of the end of August, which I'm trying to target the end of August. Sorry, I'm going to get there.
No, hold the mic. Yeah, stay by them.
Oh, if we target the end of August, then I can help with, we got to keep in mind the holidays coming up in September. And so I want to make sure that we try to do it before the holidays if possible, but I need y'all to make sure you have a calendar so we can have that conversation today as well. So at that point, we'll go through the next steps. Next steps are going to be a little bit fluid based upon what we see coming out of there. But I do want to put next steps in there. So what is the schedule?
Shelley.
Hello. What other shelters are they getting the same information from besides ours? So are they doing Richmond? I mean, are they doing Rosenberg? Are they doing?
I believe that it's those cities that do have shelters already. A lot of those questions that they asked, some of them were just taking reports off that we have on the webpage and giving it to them. Some of it was for the financial costs of running a shelter and what does that look like? Some of the historical data, some of that stuff. So we were able to work with our finance folks and pull that. So based on the types of questions that they were asking, it leads me to believe that it was actually folks who have shelters, or communities that do have shelters at the end of the day.
Rob, one more quick question. And y'all might have done this months ago, but talking about the nonprofits, did we talk to the SPCA or the Humane Society?
So I reached out to both of them and they redirected me to other organizations and, but yeah, so yes, we did, but no, we did not have a formal conversation because they weren't interested in having a conversation and just diverted us.
Yeah, so I would just kind of keep in mind with respect to the assessment, it's going to cover parts of stuff that we're interested in, but there's still a lot of conversation that we still need to have to firm up everything and what does that look like and make sure it is acceptable at the end of the day. And so from a scheduling standpoint, I started last week. Like I mentioned earlier, I started last week and then I ended up throwing it away and starting over. So I still held week one. So a little bit of how this thing works. You have weeks on top. So period is actually week. So we're week number 2. The big topics that we have are partnership meetings, nonprofits, other communities, those types of things. I have that going on forever for the most part. I think those are going to be continuing things that as Dawn has more discussions with nonprofits, there's bits and pieces, either services or how they function that we're going to want to influence into this new process. And so we'll want to pull those things out. So that's why I mentioned earlier, I don't think the research part will end until we're done because we want to continue to learn at the end of the day and not log those best practices. There's an internal team, like I mentioned earlier, and those folks are going to be meeting throughout. We meet every 2 weeks right now. So we'll ramp that up. Animal advisory board meetings, week 2, we're here now. I've kind of mapped out the other ones for now. I was targeting August 23rd, and I'll get to that here in a second as a special meeting, but that's pending y'all's confirmation. I have some council updates and then circling back to the animal advisory board as well. At some point, we're going to need a legal agreement if we decide to move forward. So I've built in time with respect to that. Council discussion and action. We'll take it to council and discussion and action. We're targeting probably 11 weeks out, but like I said, I wouldn't worry about anything that's happening kind of beyond this, because all this could slide. Depends on there's a lot of variables in there. And then pending council's action, will determine the need for an interim plan. And if we need one, then we'll start to go build one. With that, we anticipate will take probably 12 weeks or so to put that together, but it just depends on what the agreement looks like and what are we doing with it afterwards. And so that's kind of the bones of it, if you will. I do expect some additional items to be populated in there. Some of those additional items might get collapsed, but at least kind of gives us a pathway forward. I think the big thing that we were trying to identify was, does the every 2 months schedule work for us as we're going through this process? I think we've identified that it probably doesn't, and that we're going to need some time with some additional time from this board to help us think through this at the end of the day. And so, like I mentioned earlier, the shelter assessment that's kind of going on right now, it's supposed to be done in August. I'm targeting kind of the end of August for us to circle back. It's either going to have to be end of August or it's going to be first part of September, but I don't know who's going on vacation and who's going to be around. And so I try to grab a meeting before everybody heads out. If not, we'll have to circle back when everybody comes back, and that just kind of slides everything a little bit as we move forward. And so if I could really quick kind of get y'all's feel on special meeting dates, so I can kind of get that kind of figured out. And Brian, if you can help me remember, that'd be awesome. Can we just kind of do that real quick now?
It could be any day, anytime.
It could be any day, anytime. It doesn't have to be centered around lunch hour. It could be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon if we wanted it to. It could be at 9 o'clock in the morning if we wanted it to. But I'm just trying to make sure that y'all are here. What I will say is, today's commitment is tentative. I just want to make sure that day is open. I would mark it. Hopefully we'd send out an invite on your calendars to as a placeholder for now. As we get further, even though it doesn't seem like August is very far away, but in the next couple of weeks, hopefully that will get solidified a little bit better and we'll convert it to an actual meeting. I just want to make sure we have something on your calendars as a placeholder. Because if not, then it's going to be really hard there'll be tons of emails back and forth on polls at the end of the day. And so sounds like you're good. You're not good. Okay. Vacation. No, you're fine. You're good.
I can do it anytime on the 3rd.
Okay. John? Oh, Dr. Bender? That Barbara?
My phone.
Is shifting a day or so helpful, or is it like shifting a week is helpful? Okay. What's it?
So it's a Sunday, so Saturday.
Or Zoom or whatever. Okay. So next steps, like I mentioned earlier, we'll continue to research on regionalization options. We're participating in that shelter assessment that will include some reviews. We'll present those findings back to this board, receive y'all's feedback, and then at some point we'll take the study, we'll look at the feedback, and we'll have to update council at that point. So does anybody have any questions? Because I think that was my last slide.
I don't have a, thank you for the process and the fluid schedule. My question isn't on the process. I'm just curious, did we ever look at Galveston? Since League City has a really nice shelter and Galveston is a regional one and they're
That's true.
close by,
There
did we
was-
ever look at?
Who
what
brought
was
that
the
up?
Thought process.
there was one of the ladies who sat on this side of the room. I forget her name.
Shelley?
She brought it up originally. I'm not sure if we did because I think she was looking at a cost per animal and kind of the benefit, Lynn. But we can look it up. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if we
I was
did.
just curious what our neighbors, what our neighbors are doing,
Yeah,
and how that-
absolutely. That's what we're exactly
what
where
we
we're
can
at.
learn from.
Yep, right there with you. So, but no, if we haven't, we'll make sure we touch base with them. Anything else? All righty, guys. Thank you so much for your time today.
So before I go, I'm going to click through the slides for Cindy so that she can join us.
Thank you. Okay. So to start off with, I just wanted to touch base with everybody on staffing. We had thought we had all the vacancies filled as of July 10th. However, the vet tech position that was initially accepted in June declined. She declined it 5 days before her start date. So we've had to repost that. So the full-time receptionist has started. So many of y'all had met Skyla. We've got our 2 animal service officers positions filled. Terry started 2 weeks ago, and then Katie has started this week. So we're getting there. We thought we were going to be there this week, but we're still working on it. We are going to continue to utilize staffing agencies for additional kennel tech staff due to the high capacity and the high volume we have right now, and also using the RU vet tech until that position gets filled. And hopefully that'll be pretty quick. I think we have some positive interest and positive strong candidates for that. Go to the next slide. So just updating y'all on where we stand with our heartworm treatments. We've actually been able to treat 40 dogs at this point. And the amazing thing is that the 3 dogs that are still in the shelter that have received the treatment have now tested negative. So they came into us heartworm positive. They were treated. So now Sammy, Cheech, and Chong have all tested negative at their 6-month post-treatment. So that's great news. I don't like the fact that we still have them to test them in the shelter. However, it's great news that we do have those negative tests. Dr. Bender has been doing a lot of surgeries down at Fort Bend County. They have done surgeries, spay and neuter, and a couple of emergency surgeries on a total of 304 animals of ours and theirs. Of those, 33 of the dogs were ours, 67 were the cats that were spayed or neutered, and then there were 2 emergency surgeries of the amputations that got completed down there. So those ones that we did not have to contract out, that Dr. Bender was actually doing in-house, so to speak, with that agreement. Those surgeries are now on hold, awaiting Dr. Bender's DEA registration to finalize with them. There's no ETA available on it. So we've had to move back to contract veterinarian surgeries as of this week. So we're waiting on her DEA registration, and we have no control over that. That's completely the Department of Justice on the DEA registration. Next slide. So when you call when you call our main number, the phones actually route through to 311 first. They have protocols where they can answer some questions and filter out a lot of the phone traffic for us. But as you can see, the trend of our increasing volume is directly reflected through our 311 information. We've had a drastic uptick of people outside the city contacting shelter for various reasons. As you can see, the outside of non-residents is green on this, so you can see those numbers have increased very much so. Also, just something to point out on this data, that these numbers are strictly our daytime call volume. This doesn't include anything for after hours or weekends. So our call volume has increased 147% since February. And 36% of the city's 311 calls are actually animal service calls. Next slide. So one of the things that we've been able to do is through the 311 data, they're able to create heat maps for us. So we now have something that's really a great visual for this. Now, there's only 741 calls mapped. We do have more calls that have come in, but because of how the addresses have to be populated within the system, this is what we're able to capture at this point in time. So this is the January to June calls that have been mapped. And like I said, they have to have a physical address, but it does help us understand our trends and our hot spots within our territories. Next slide. So drilling down on this information a little bit, these numbers, like I said, if I already pointed out, are outside of Sugar Land resident calls have been greatly increasing. We're not really sure why. However, we're expecting that they're getting turned away elsewhere and they're turning to us. The other thing is our found pets, which are the dark blue, the feral and stray are growing exponentially, which is the red is feral and stray dog, and then the dark blue right above it, the second bar is found pets and lost pets. And you can see that in January, the total on those two were 82, and in June it was 201. So those numbers are greatly increasing, which really demonstrates not only how busy we are in the shelter, but how busy our animal control officers are. Again, not counting the evening and weekend calls. Next, please. So this heat map shows concentrated areas of justice stray dogs and feral cats that are reported. This is data that we're monitoring as we look to expand our TNR pilot program, which I'm going to discuss on a future slide. But this is just an example of how we can utilize this data to make our services better. Next. And then the last one I have from the 311 call data is going to be just showing you that it's not just internal Sugar Land residents that we're getting these calls from. We have over 200 calls that are addresses that we can identify for location that are outside of the city. And I believe this was just for June. So our call volume outside of our area has tremendously gone up. Next. Just a quick snapshot of where we were as of July 7th. As you can see, we do not have as many dogs in the shelter as we have had previously. However, we do have a lot more kittens and cats. We do have some out on foster care, but I'll come to that in a minute, that we could still use some more help. So next. So one thing I do want to point out, we are in better shape now than we were in May as far as our capacity. However, overcapacity is going to continue to be a bigger issue than just for us, as you can see in all of these headlines. Too many animals, Harris County pets are suspending intake. Other shelters in the area are closing or not responding for stray animals. Harris County is only responding to aggressive, sick, or injured dogs. And this is in effect until August 1st. At that point, they're going to reevaluate. And we were told the other day, Fort Bend County is not responding for stray dogs for call outs. So I haven't confirmed that, but we actually had an employee that called from the county. I do want to say our staff has done an amazing job keeping these dogs inside with this heat. They found dogs that enjoy each other's company, and we've doubled them up, which also helps in socializing the dogs together. But the big thing is keeping them out of heat exhaustion and out of the elements. So this next slide shows we still do have a lot of dogs. Our numbers are down, but from May, but we do have a lot of dogs, and we're having to house dogs in areas really not meant to house animals, but they are out of the heat. So that's where we're doing a great job there. Next, please. So one of the things that has occurred recently due to this nice heat and humidity we have, ringworm, which is a fungus that thrives in our hot and humid environment. We have had a ringworm outbreak as a seasonal, which is not unexpected. Cats are natural carriers like humans. Some are more susceptible than others. We do have staff and volunteers that have contracted it. So we've emphasized stringent treatment, limiting personnel in certain areas, and also making sure we're utilizing PPE appropriately. We're successfully treating our herd. One thing is we've had an overflow into the general population at one point with a total of 51 cases last month, but we are down to 20 at this point. So by being able to treat them topically, also with oral medication, and then doing twice weekly lime sulfur dips, we are getting this under control. So you can go to the next slide. Now, before I've just shown the dog, so this is the status of what we are on cats. That ringworm, that picture on the left is our ringworm room. And as you can see, everything is full. The other photos are showing you that we have full cages of kittens that are waiting to get big enough to be spayed or neutered and waiting for medical clearance. So with that being said, we can still use some fosters to help us free up space on some of these kittens. And it's not so much that we have the bottle babies. We've had some, but we do have a large number of kittens that are beyond bottle baby, that could use some fostering for some socialization, and also just to get them out of the shelter environment. Next. So just run through these really quickly. As you saw in the 311 call data, our intake, and with our intake closed, we're still responding to stray dogs and feral cats. And we are still springing in dogs. So as you can see, even though we are closed over the counter intake, we still do have dogs coming in. We are getting them out, but we still do have them coming in. Again, this is just some data if you want to move through. Just some drill down data on what those outcomes are. So on cats in February, we had, I think we talked about it. We had other agencies reaching out to us because they were looking for cats, because shelters were needing cats. They felt they needed cats. However, that uptick has changed, and we do have cats that are still going out, but we also, as you can see, our incoming number is drastically higher than our outtakes at this point in time. Next slide. One thing I want to point out on this one as we drill down is that the transfers are down because we had a large transfer scheduled last month that ended up getting canceled because of the ringworm we found in the shelter. But now that we have it under control, we're working on it again. I know that Friday I was communicating with best friends, and they advised some of their fosters are finishing up vacations and coming back into town, and they may be able to help, but we're going to continue to work down that path as far as trying to get some of the kittens and cats out. Next. On our TNR pilot program, due to some personal commitments, trapping was not as consistent this past month. I believe there was a grandbaby born, and completely understand that the TNR program is going to have to take back seat to that. Again, when you have one volunteer that you're relying on to get this done, it's not going to be able to be successful when she's not available. Throughout the season, she had found 2 litters of bottle babies. And actually on this slide, I have that 3 were adopted out of the first 4. And I looked this morning, the one that hadn't been adopted out is now on a sleepover. So 3 were adopted out and 1's out on a sleepover, hopefully to be adopted out shortly. And then the other 3 kittens that were found on 5/8 have all been adopted out. So they were successfully transitioned outside of the TNR program. We do have 2 that were found the week of June 26th. They are still pending spay or neuter. They were found and treated for heat exhaustion or overheating, which we do believe is probably going to affect the census of those cats. But the TNR program is the pilot is continuing. We actually there have been some law changes that passed that will, I believe, go into effect as of September 1st regarding legalizing essentially a trap, neuter, and release back to where it was found program. So we're going to be looking at expanding our pilot program, expanding a community cat program. We did attend a webinar on that yesterday. And once I get back into town, I'll sit down and meet with Jillian and Dravis and have further conversations on how we're going to move forward with a different pilot program or an additional pilot program. The next two slides are our best friends report for May and June. The board, you had gotten those in your packets or in your email this last week. So again, these are just posted to the website as we go on through a monthly basis. And then finally, one more. Our recent trainings. So we did have our best friends come out and do bottle baby training. It seems like it was forever ago. It was May 20th. Gray Wolf Animal Behavior came out and had an afternoon training session, and that's what this picture is in the background. Really good animal behavioral training, showed us how to do some introduction of animals. And not only did we get the training, but we videoed it, we shared it with staff, and it was also shared at the volunteer group, which I think Jillian is going to cover. And then this week, Dr. Hogg came in, did some behavioral training with the group. It was videoed and it will be shared with our staff moving forward. And then again, like I talked about, the community cat program training that we sat in on yesterday, which one we're going to be focusing on communities that have the most prevalent issue. With that being said, we're going to move on to Jillian.
All right, so updates since we last met for community engagement. So we did, again, this does seem like a long time ago, but we had a bottle baby educational class, not only for staff to be able to go to, but it was open to the community. We did have a good turnaround, and it was nice to see so many kids because they were really interested, like, how do I feed it so little? So it's really cute to see like younger people involved in this as well. And then again, we did have Gray Wolf training come out. I thought it was great because it really focused on introducing play groups and how to introduce dogs, not only in houses, but in the shelter as well. That's one of the best forms of enrichment, in my opinion. And so that was really exciting to have that, even though it was extremely hot. We've since suspended outside trainings. So Dr. Hoggs was inside for this one, but it was really great training with Maurice. We have an ongoing partnership. We actually signed it a month or two ago. It has been on pause because we accidentally gave them a ringworm cat, but they are clearing it and we've been forgiven. So we'll reestablish that quickly. So we're going to work on that. So even though it's 1 or 2 cats, ideally every week, depending on how much space they have, it's still something concrete that we're able to continually use, which is something we're always looking for with rescues. It's not just like here or there, but something regular is really appreciated. Again, a long time ago, I can't see the date on here. It was like June 10th or something like that. We had a second mega adoption, and that was at Fort Bend County Fairgrounds again. It was a lot smaller population as expected versus before Christmas when everyone wants to get puppies and different animals. But we still had 6 dogs and 2 cats get adopted from that. And so that was still a great event for us in terms of success. One of our actual adopters, she adopted one of the puppies that we had. Her name's Erica, and she's a professional photographer. So she donated about 3 or 4 hours with us to take updated professional photos of all of our pets, which segues into now, if you haven't been on our website in a while, we're no longer running Trello. All of our stuff, instead of through me and whatever time I have, we are automated. And so if you go to our city website and click on adoptable pets, there's actually 2 major changes. The first one is that adoptable pets actually show up here and it's coming directly from Chameleon. So as soon as something is updated, I think there's a little bit of a lag. It's not like instantaneous, but it's definitely within a reasonable amount of time that you can now see the animals. And we've continually tweaked as far as adding AID. So if someone's calling about an animal that isn't named yet, then we could know. And then the other one is lost and found pet. So instead of, okay, I need to call and figure out is my stray here, email, we have that live as well. So during the stray hold, we have those pets posted. And then once they come off, they're held on unavailable until they actually qualify for surgery or whatever they need to become adoptable, in which case they get named and then they're on our adoptable page. So that's really exciting. It saves my role a huge amount of time. So that was a really big win for us to be able to work with the city and tech and communications really as well. We do have a summer intern. I believe she's University of Florida, but she's joined us. She grew up locally, so she's with us part-time, helping me with social media, helping with marketing and that type, and then part-time with the police department. So she's been a big help. So if you see her sitting next to me, she's one of our college interns. So this is the first picture on the right-hand side. This is the beginning stage when we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we do a kitten cam? If you've ever seen the cat enrichment room, it was a tangle of wires. It was a little bit archaic. So we've worked with communications, and actually this afternoon we are getting a brand new mount and some cameras that I believe used to be in here or one of the rooms in this building. So we'll have a more efficient setup as far as recording and live streaming the cat. So there'll be a little bit of delay getting the IT portion corrected and getting things installed, but we will eventually have that room actually under cameras. So that will be awesome. We were invited to another event at the Houston Light Art Space. This was later in June. And so it was a much smaller space. Every shelter was given a 10 by 10. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I can take 2 dogs. And so I replied for 4 and they're like, well, I think you can take more. Like, we can help you. So we ended up taking every puppy we have, and then we took 4 dogs on top of that. And from that, we had 4 of our 8 dogs get adopted, and I'm not too upset. 3 of them were puppies, but that's okay. From that picture, the only one left is Ivory. So since then, Rocco, Fritz, Hank, Caroline, and all the puppies have been adopted. So even though it took a little bit longer than just from that event, still good news for them. On the right, this was, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, we started a trial at Hollywood Feed to see if there was more traffic. So we took Jet and Latte. Jet got adopted yesterday, so Latte's been divorced, but she's looking for a new mate. So in the meantime, she's with us and happy-go-lucky. So we'll do a second version, I believe August 1st or whatever that first Saturday is. That's when we'll do a second trial to see if the foot traffic pays off. And then to kind of wrap up my section as far as community engagement, the adoption event on Hollywood Feed, August 1st, that will be the next one from 11 to 2. I know Charlene stopped by and we had a couple of volunteers go to help us as well. Education opportunity. So this was brand new. I had to update my slides because I didn't have the picture uploaded since this was on Monday, but Dr. Hogg was there and she did some demonstrations. And like Cindy said, we'll have that video that we can share with staff. And then I'll probably have a similar event to the previous training where I'll invite volunteers and then I'll play that video live so they can see it as well and benefit. Separately, she's not in the room today. She normally attends these, but we do have 2 volunteers that have helped us run small scale adoption events at local businesses. So that way it doesn't take up all of my time. I know one, they took a couple of puppies and one, they took a couple of kittens. And so still getting some traction. The small events honestly don't tend to have a lot of outcomes in terms of sleepovers or adoptions, but it's still a good way to promote the shelter. We again continue to use social media. These are some of the photos that Erica took that were really great. If you haven't looked at them, they're super cute. We've also done some more PSA, so really focusing on heat specific things. I know we were struggling to get animals in and it definitely took some creative practices, but also reminding people that concrete's too hot. If you don't want to walk on it, they don't want to walk on it. And that 5-10 minutes can add up. And so one of the things we changed is that even though some people were a little bit sad, I think everyone really received it well, is that our afternoon dog walking sessions through September are canceled in the sense that now our enrichment for afternoons is about 5 or 10 minutes in the backyard. And that's really to allow them time to go to the restroom. But what we've noticed is that, I'm sure Ellen can attest, the vast majority are like, okay, I'm ready to go in. Like, it's hot. And then we did have 2 volunteers donate additional pools. So we do have some kiddie pools in each of the yards. So just opportunities for them to still enjoy being outside of their kennel or their run, but still keeping them safe from the heat. All right, and I'll turn it over to Dawn.
At this point, we will move on to item number 5, Director's Report by Dalton staff.
Okay, so if you notice, the title has changed. I am now an interim executive director here at the city. And it was a temporary assignment through the summer due to an issue internally. So I've moved to take over some internal departments, which includes IT and innovation. And so with that left a hole of where is ENS going to report to? So Brian Butcher, who is the Director of Public Works, has now absorbed ENS under Public Works and is also an executive director. So congrats to Brian. So I'm trying to think of when this happened. How long ago was this?
In May. maybe
So-
June.
Yeah, so it's fairly recent. We're in a transition of what that looks like. So staff now reports directly to Brian. He and I talk a lot about like what's going on and has been going on at the shelter. And so he will be taking over that role. He will be giving the director reports going forward. I will still stay on the board. Now, as y'all know, we have reappointments coming up, which is on the next slide. But so that's the change when it comes to the director staffing. Do you want to give? You can go ahead. Or,
No, no,
you
no.
can- Talk. You want
I
to
really
talk?
have
I know.
nothing to
You
say.
always.
No, so,
Right?
hello.
Or I'll let
Yeah, I have no problem. I've never seen a mic I wasn't excited about. No, my name is Brian, like she said. I have been with the city for 8 years. While I haven't been directly involved with the shelter, Public Works has been peripherally involved very much. If y'all volunteer, you see Public Works folks in the bright yellow shirts, or the bright blue shirts. I've been sitting in the staff rooms with Rob and Dawn for many years, and kind of keeping involved, but never been formally involved. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take them. Like I said, Dawn's going to run through direct report this time. Dawn's sitting on the board now. We'll have those discussions about reappointments and things in the coming weeks and months. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or happy to work with you. I have a dog and not a cat. If that offends anybody, I apologize. I do love cats, but we're a dog family. So, anything? I could still have a cat. You're right. So, all right. Well, thank you, Dawn. I'll turn it back.
Yes, Brian, actually, my office was in one corner and his was in the other. So he very much has come along the journey with animals services and has heard everything for what I've been back for 2 years. So he knows everything that's been happening. So I fully have trust in Brian to take this and go with it. So the director change, just informed you of that. The public concerns, an old one that I should deleted. You already got the update on the interlocal agreement. So that's working well. We just need the DEA license to be issued so we can continue that successful partnership. And board reappointments are coming up. I don't know if you haven't received an email, you will receive an email asking if you want to be reappointed. So just respond to that email by the due date. And then the internal committee will be formed to determine those reappointments. And then they'll officially be appointed in either October or November like last year. And we'll go through that full process again of the oath of office and all the forms and trainings that you'll have to complete if you do want to be reappointed. So that look for that very, very soon. If not this week, I think you'll may get an email. So we'll continue. We haven't had subcommittee meetings yet. I think we've had a lot of things ongoing. We are going to be talking about ordinance modifications in the very near future for TNR and for a potential microchip requirement. So that will be a future conversation that would go to the subcommittee and then this board. And then we're still ongoing, obviously always looking at the operations and the policies and the processes, especially as we have these conversations with the regionalization research, learning about what's worked well others and then trying to implement that here. And so we'll continue to do that.
Dawn, do you know if the other committees will ever start back up?
It'll depend on what is needed, because I know we have the donations,
the
we have the field and ordinance modifications. So I would think the TNR and microchip would run through the field one first, and then we would run the ordinance modifications because we love John's input on how to write things. He's very good at that. So yes, so there will be some polling of when y'all can meet to talk about those prior to it coming here. Questions? A party? That's the Space Cowboys game. Brian's first, which that did remind me of the Space Cowboys game. So there was one, obviously there's another one. We should be getting that information and we'll email you your ticket to attend if you said that you're going to attend. And then it'll also include the link to purchase your parking ahead of time. It's a discounted rate if you buy it online versus paying when you get there. So we'll be sending out that information. I will be there. Brian, I think, is going as well. So we'll both be there with whoever is planning to attend that event.
Can I ask a couple of questions about the website?
Yeah.
Since you've said that Sammy and Cheech and Chong are now testing negative, have we changed that on the website? Because I know that it always says heartworm positive if they're positive. So I'm wondering if we took that off now that we know they're negative, or we changed it to negative.
I'll have to check, because I know I did on Trello, but I didn't know.
I don't think it shows up. I don't think it shows up on it now. That was a Trello button, a Trello tag. I don't think that's on there now.
So none of the dogs say whether they're positive or negative. It just doesn't say at all.
I don't think it says it.
Okay.
And then.
Okay. One more question. And this, don't take this personally. When you look at the adoptable pets on the website, it says dogs, cats, and then off to the right, it says off-site. And the off-site is generally those in foster. And when I look at it, I'm thinking, if I'm out there, say, looking for a dog, which is the first column on the left, I focus on dog and I looked. I'm not going to go over, and I don't even know what off-site means, let's say.
Yeah.
It could mean off-site events. It could mean anything. But we've got dogs in foster, and I'm wondering if people are actually seeing that column. And the only, I need to, like, if I'm going to put this out there, come up with a solution, which I don't totally have, but would there be a reason we couldn't list them, the dogs in foster, under dogs, and then in there say in foster care and, how to meet Cinnamon, how to meet, but then if it's fed automatically, I guess that wouldn't work.
Like that's a general consensus that people feel. It originally was that way because we didn't want people looking online and going
To the shelter and the dog's not there.
It's not there and they get frustrated.
Right.
That was the original.
Yeah, but if it,
Generally, people think that that's something we should fix.
I would just like to get people's input on, if you're looking for a dog, do you see this other column, and would you even click on it or go there?
It'd be better if it said in foster.
Maybe, I don't know. Would that,
Or maybe have the two dog columns next to each other so they're even.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
have the cat.
like dogs in foster, cats and,
Yeah,
or
or just
available-
available dogs, available
They
dogs
ask
is
for-
the heading and then two branches at the shelter
in foster,
in foster or offsite or.
something, because I just,
I do in foster care, because we know what offsite means, but we don't know what.
yeah, we don't
General public.
know what other
what-
people think. And if they just see dogs, so they look on dogs.
Yeah.
But we've got, good dogs in foster, maybe.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
just putting that out there.
She will look at it.
And I know I'm not at the mic, but one thing I totally forgot that was I signed the contract for, we were hosting our first mega adoption event in Competition Field. And then we just got invited to the Houston mega adoption event on October 21st. So if you missed that, September 2nd, we're going to do our first host of mega adoption, and that's with like Fort Bend. We invite Missouri City, and then we also have Rosenberg there. And so they've planned the last two ones, and that was Renee with Fort Bend County. So this time we put it together. We just signed it. And so there'll be lots of advertisements and details coming out as we get closer. It will be in the breezeways, and it will be September 2nd. So we shouldn't have the heat dome, but we will always be very careful. And if dogs get hot, we always have kennel trucks to cool them off. Yep. The other one off the top of my head, I believe it's October 20th and 21st, and that's at George R. Brown. And that's with like Mass Texas Group. So that one's the enormous one. And so if they provide pop-up kennels for that one, I just replied yes today, then we will take every dog that we have that's adoptable. And those are my updates I forgot to add.
Would it be possible to share the trainings? Would they be worthwhile for the public to be able to see on the city's YouTube or something, or?
So I know Dr. Hogg specifically said she would not permit that. When I talked to Maurice, he was more open-minded to it for the Gray Wolf training. In fact, we actually shared the recording that our communications team created so that he could then use it. So I don't think he would necessarily have a problem with it. And honestly, it was a really good training. As far as Dr. Hogg, I explicitly asked and she said no. She said staff only was fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Donna, I had a question.
Yeah.
Back to the TNR at the mall and the heat. How are we handling that in terms of when traps are going out? Because we're talking mostly metal traps, and is there water in there, and how long what would be the maximum amount of time from when this set out versus their check that the animals would be in there? Because when we had first started talking about TNR, we had specifically said we wouldn't be doing it during these months because of the heat.
Yeah.
So
there's specific parameters that we have to meet with them all, and the traps can only be set at night and must be picked up, I think, by 6 or 7 in the morning. So we're not leaving traps out during the heat of the day.
and do they have water in them?
It's only overnight on Sunday nights.
But no water.
Is there water in them, Cindy?
I know that they put food in them. I don't know if they have water in them or not. I do not know the process on that.
Yeah. And we can check with Dravis and see what's happening with that. But yeah, it is only at night. There are no traps set during the day. Any other questions? Okay, I will just watch for a future email about this special meeting, and then watch for an email about reappointments as well.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Is there a second? Robin? All those in favor? Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.